Previously on The Business.
Let's welcome our first guest onto The Business this morning. Brought to you by F&B Business Banking. Devon Stanton, it is great to have you here. How are you, first of all?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for coming through. Thanks for braving the traffic. It's been a bit of a nightmare in Joburg.
You have no idea.
We're talking Bitcoins today, and I tweeted earlier on this morning saying we're talking Bitcoins on F&B Biz, and immediately I got retweets from Bitcoin bots going pew, 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 and retweeting my stuff. People are absolutely fascinated by what the hell a Bitcoin is. I did some research myself. I genuinely did because I was interested.
As did I.
I went onto Wikipedia. I started to Google. I started to watch YouTube videos. I got into pages, South African pages even, that told me how I could mine Bitcoins and what equipment was needed. And then I found people who are building massively quick machines who do this for a living. And I'm still confused. Devon, what is a Bitcoin?
Okay, well, I must admit, when the Bitcoin topic came up as well, I immediately rushed to the internet as well. I was like, what is this Bitcoin thing? And I had a look at it, and on the surface it seemed, oh, okay, cool, Bitcoin, internet currency type of thing. Must be like an ePel or eBucks, or PayPal, sorry. And when I dug deeper, I suddenly realized, whoa, this is a whole new kettle of fish. This is really something completely new, very young, still in its infancy. But it sort of bridges the gap between technology and finance. So I can explain the technology side of it, and then hopefully some financial bots can come in and add to the conversation. But I suppose...
We all looked at Ian.
I suppose the best way to look at a Bitcoin is to essentially, it's trying to be its own currency, but on the internet. So if you could imagine the internet as a country. So if you're traveling to the internet, you need internet currency. So Bitcoin is now that new currency that you will be using, if that makes any sense to you. So it's being traded on, it is a traded currency, so you'll be able to exchange rands, dollars, euros for Bitcoin, and it's quite strong at the moment, which is quite interesting. It's very difficult to actually buy, but you can trade it, and there are apps where you can download for your phone, which are called wallets. But the currency conversion is quite interesting. For one Bitcoin, you'll pay about 10,000 rand for it.
And what do you do with those Bitcoins then?
Okay, so now you have the currency for the internet. Okay, so it's much the same as what you would do on any shopping area. You'd go to a shop and you'd go and buy using your Bitcoin as opposed to using your local currency. The advantage of this is that there's no bank that needs an admin fee or transaction fee or anything like that. So Bitcoin sits on the internet. It's free of any government institution and all that sort of stuff. So it's much cheaper to buy using a Bitcoin than it is to buy with your local currency.
Just quickly, $838.50, and it's changing as I'm speaking. But that's generally what it's worth at the moment. So
okay, so I'm trying to understand now. Does that mean that anybody who's running some kind of e-commerce site or accepts money for something on the internet from a customer or a client needs to buy into this concept of a Bitcoin, because that's presumably where it's got to go? They've got to say, well, we accept Bitcoins.
Yes, essentially it's a community-driven thing. So the community being the internet and the web base. So as a e-tailer, you will have the option for people to use Bitcoins to buy. So when an e-tailer gets it, they will then get Bitcoin currency put into their shop wallet. They can then take that, once they've collected Bitcoins, they can then trade it with their local bank to get their own local currency as well.
So there are banks that are accepting Bitcoins?
Banks will accept, there are certain institutes that will accept the conversion of a Bitcoin. So they'll collect the Bitcoin and then they can use it.
I mean, ultimately, what we're seeing here is the growth of a currency, which the foundation of it I still don't understand. But
bit of an underground feel to it. Hey, it kind of feels like someone's trying to do something really big.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Sure.
When I did some research, I found out that there's a thing called the deep web. the deep
Yes.
internet.
Yes.
And that is basically the foundation of what we see as HTTP www, and please feel free to jump in here at any time. It's basically the matrix of what is going on the internet, and a lot of underground stuff is happening in that realm because it's very difficult to track people. It's very difficult to track what's going on, and that, from what I understood this article to be, was where Bitcoin started to become its own thing. And it's now surfaced, it's bubbled up into mainstream life. The point that I was going to make before I said that was that Bitcoin essentially has to be accepted by a vendor and has to be owned by somebody who's wanting to do a transaction in order for that to work. And going back to money, rands and cents, US dollars, etc., they're based on gold. If you go right back to the beginning of it, it was based on trading. I'll give you 2 cows and you give me your front lawn for use for the rest of the year so that I can grow my corn. That's kind of how it would work. And the barter system eventually ended up you got notes, and those notes had to have some value, and that was gold. It was based on gold coins. Let's not go into that now because it's with quantitative easing and printing of money, it just gets very confusing. But what essentially it was the basic foundation of what money is. What's the foundation of a Bitcoin? That's what worries me, because if that's taken away, what will it really be worth, and who's controlling that?
Well, I guess, Devon, off the back of that, is this the beginning of that sort of paperless society, that a currency that's not tangible?
Yes, well, this is exactly what I was thinking. You know, after looking at all the information, how it develops and how it grows, you sort of have to take a step back and say, okay, well, it's very much in its infancy. And they have, when you read all of the getting started and everything like that, they take you through some very detailed documentation, warning you to be very careful on how you spend it, not to keep money into your wallet, because the currency is so volatile at the moment. It's going up and down, so it hasn't stabilized yet because it's so new. But the other thing I wanted to mention as well is that Bitcoins aren't in their big numbers yet. They're still being minted on the internet. And that's where your data servers came in earlier, where you can actually be a Bitcoin miner. So a Bitcoin miner is somebody who will go out and they do data mining. Data mining is and that's why you need the big machines to process numbers.
They go into that deep web.
Yeah, they go into the deep web. It's the heavy number crunching, and you basically, again, from our talk from last time, it's the cloud computing where you are now you're allowing your machine to be a data cruncher for a bigger purpose.
Is that not a pyramid scheme?
No, not quite, because you are not earning anything from the mining of the data.
But who are you mining the data for?
This is the thing.
That's
it's
my
become
question about
like a game
somebody's
almost.
up to something. There's
Somebody?
something. and you must have read the same things I did when you get into that deep web stuff. And Devon, I'm sure you came across it as well, where there's a lot of talk about almost like a mafia type setup going on there, and a lot of sites being shut down and then finding loopholes and reopening. So there's something going on there.
Yeah. Well, this is what I couldn't find as well. You know, what I really wanted to know as well is like, why are we crunching all this data? And all I can find out from it is that it's a process of work. You are working, and that is once you complete a block of data, that gets submitted, and then you either earn a Bitcoin or you don't.
Sorry, submit it to who?
On the Bitcoin data servers. So on the wallet, you will download a piece of software where you can edit all the code and everything like that. It's very advanced. It's like way beyond my understanding of how the actual data structures work.
So are there people who are making money out of this kind of mining?
I've just logged on. Sorry, with that question. Satoshi Nakamoto is the pseudonym's person or group that designed and created Bitcoin. So somebody has made this and is getting data mined for them. It has to be that way. And therefore, they're the ones that are they're the beneficiaries.
Can you not say that they actually created their own currency then?
Of course they did, but what's in it for them?
Yeah, it's perhaps it's a bit of the Gillette story, you know.
Yeah.
Let's sell the blades. Let's sell the blades, and they want the blades, but to use the blade,
You
they
gotta have the
to
handle.
get the razor.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what's going on here.
I keep interrupting
More
you,
to
Devon.
it.
Please carry on.
No,
I'm
it's
so
good.
interested.
Tell us
It's all good.
everything you think.
Okay, well, I mean, the next step for me was actually find out, okay, well, who is actually supporting this Bitcoin currency? Which retailers are doing this? And I found things like you can buy laptops, you can go and buy an Amazon gift card, and the Bitcoin currency is there. It's available for you to get it if you have Bitcoins. And obviously, my first take on it was like, I'm not spending one Bitcoin to buy it, to buy a gift card which cost me 10,000 Rand. That's ridiculous. But what they've done is the Bitcoins their decimals can go up to 8 decimal places. So you're paying 0.01 cents or
Bitcoins.
centi Bitcoin or something like that. That's what they've named them. And you can get them all the way down to a milli Bitcoin. And that's how you do your conversion. Obviously, the bigger the digit that you're spending on, the easier it is for the transaction to happen. But the thing is, it's a very new way. I'm quite excited about it, actually. I mean, I know there's the deep internet and the conspiracy around it, but it could be an amazing new step into getting that online transaction, because like I've always said as well, we have to stop thinking so locally with everything in every region. The internet has brought the world closer. So we need a internet currency, and we need something where we can go, oh, I like that from Europe. Let me pay for that and get it, instead of having to worry about going through your banks, being charged for the exchange rate, and then not knowing about certain fees on the other side, and then coming through and it just biting you in the arse again and again. So that single currency that you can use to say, well, this is what I'm going to use for all my internet transactions. It just makes life a lot simpler. But again, it's just very volatile at the moment. I'm a little bit worried about actually investing in it at the moment.
Yeah, very, very early days probably. But I hear what you're saying. It could actually be the start of what, in a number of years, we actually consider to be a very normal way of parting with a currency in order to get what we want.
What's also interesting as well, and I found that Bitcoin is not limited to just online. You can actually have a physical store that accepts Bitcoins.
No way.
So,
are you serious?
So that's where your Bitcoin wallet comes in.
Yeah.
So your Bitcoin wallet, you'll display a or a QR code. You remember QR codes?
Yeah, absolutely.
So a QR code shows up
They
on
were
your
a hit.
screen.
Weren't they just? Yeah.
You go to the store, the clerk will scan your barcode, and they deduct the funds immediately from you. So already you're seeing like a paperless environment where you don't need to worry about it. It's all the transactions happen online.
Could you find any South African e-commerce sites?
I couldn't find any South African one. It was actually really hard to find a Bitcoin e-tailer.
Yeah.
But they do have what they call the Bitcoin map. So you can log onto the map and find Bitcoin retailers in your area. I didn't find anybody in my area.
No.
But all that information is available on the sites that they provide.
Interesting. You talk about this internet currency and this currency which is now growing, and China has rejected it. Mainland China has said no. They will not value a Bitcoin.
That's because they'd like their currency to become the de facto currency going forward and not the dollar.
Well, the thing is that I think a lot of governments are going to look at this and go, hang on a minute, we don't know what you're spending. Don't forget that credit card reporting has to be passed on to the Reserve Bank. So if you have an FNB credit card and you go onto Amazon and you go and buy yourself a lovely book by Stephen King, and that gets sent to you, if it's not stolen, it lands on your doorstep, and then you have to report that $19 was spent on your credit card to the Reserve Bank. With Bitcoins, there's no reporting going on. And because you've mined it, no one knows where you've earned it from. And so the cycle continues. And suddenly you're cutting out a whole bunch of red tape and just simply living on the internet.
You are, but what you're losing as a consumer is that sense of comfort and safety. I mean, I know that I'm very relieved when that SMS alert comes through on my phone or email notification, whatever it is, telling me that one of my cards has been used. And that's my bank that's doing that for me. And you saw me the other day. My eyes nearly popped out of my head because I realized the card was being used, okay? So you kind of, now you've gotten consumers used to that, and it's become an expectation that if my bank can't service me in that way, well, I'd rather go to a bank that can, at the very least. So I have to raise that question and say, well, it can start as a currency, but ultimately, surely it is going to have to service some of those natural expectations which we've taken as givens, basic minimums of service. I don't want somebody spending my bitcoins if I buy into the whole system and not knowing about it.
Which brings us onto security and safety, really, doesn't it? I mean, that sense of SMS coming through going...
Yeah, so while I don't
okay,
like
thank
the
goodness.
Reserve Bank necessarily knowing every single transaction I've had to do, but I accept that the bank has to report that. The upside of it for me is that I'm glad that the bank is looking out for that kind of expenditure, so that if there is a transaction that's performed that I haven't authorized and I don't know about, I can act on it.
There was a wonderful story that I came across on the internet when doing some research about bitcoins, with a chap who went on TV on one of the NBC or one of the morning business shows to try and do exactly what we're doing here, trying to unpack Bitcoin. And he held up his mobile phone with a QR code and he said, well, in my wallet at the moment, I have 15 Bitcoins. And he carried on. What he forgot was that there's a thing called PVR. And some very clever person paused the PVR, went to the TV, took a photograph of his QR code, and stole all of his bitcoins. So
I rest my case.
So the point is that the security around it is something that you really have to be concerned about.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that happened because, from what I've read as well, the Bitcoin security is something that's really top notch. They've used military grade encryption data sets to try and encode your address. Now, your address is basically your bank account number,
right,
which is what the QR code will represent. And no transaction can happen unless it has your authentication. So for that guy to have scanned his QR code, some sort of authentication would have had to happen in that process. So you would have had to say, do you accept the transaction, yes or no? Or he's managed to hack his way into his account. Maybe his password wasn't secure enough or something like that. What Bitcoin has introduced as well is a multi-signature authentication process. So if you and your spouse share a Bitcoin wallet and she goes shopping for shoes and wants to spend the Bitcoin, an authentication happens for her and then for the husband as well, to say, this transaction is happening, are you okay with it? And then both can sign. And you can have up to, I think it's 8 signatories onto a single account. So for businesses, if you have your employees going out and say they're overseas and they need transactions, they are now spending Bitcoins, and then your accounts can then authorize the payments from the local office.
So just a question on my side in terms of context, by way of recapping the kinds of things we're talking about. Am I understanding it correctly, guys? Help me out here. Number one, you can part with real hard currency, whether it's dollars or rands or whatever it is, and you can buy bitcoins, or you can mine data, essentially work on behalf of somebody who's looking for that data and earn bitcoins at its highest level. Is that kind of what we've come across? Two ways of generating those bitcoins.
The thing with the mining, though, is that there's a limit to how many coins can be minted. And the more and more miners that come online to do this data mining, the more coins will be released, and the harder the encryptions will become. So they've said here that some miners might only get 3 bitcoins in a year. So that's the sort of turnover that they'd be looking at. So that's why a lot of these guys have got server farms mining bitcoins, or they've teamed up with a bunch of other guys to create a Bitcoin farm or a pool of these guys, and they then share whatever is mined from this operation. But as more coins become minted, less mining will be available. So that incentive to earn free bitcoins is going to change as well. So like I said, it's still early days, so all this stuff has to happen. So there has to be some sort of control space where it's monitored.
Has anybody seen what Google's take on the Bitcoin is, just out of interest? Because, when you start talking about them having these server farms and teaming up, I start thinking Google, its algorithms, the amazing control it has actually over the internet by sheer virtue of those algorithms.
Yeah.
Have you come across anything?
I didn't find anything from Google, but I did find a hosting company that rents out Bitfarm servers. So you can go to them and say, I'd like to host so many Bitfarm servers, and they work in terabytes. So how much terabyte of data do you want to process? And they charge, I think the cheapest starts at $10 a month. And then you can earn more and more. But essentially then you're not really earning
Anything.
Bitcoin for nothing.
No.
So you are now paying to earn Bitcoin.
A bit of a capital investment in the hope that your stock trade is going to work.
But the thing is, like I said, going back to the whole Bitcoin is tradable online, and it's a very strong currency online, like you see with the dollar and the rand. It's something that I look at it and I see immediately, I go, that must be like a Kruger rand. It's something you buy and you hold on to, you wait for your investment to grow. But because the market's so volatile, we don't know where it's going to go. We don't know if it's going to be accepted by everybody. Like you say, with China not accepting it, maybe they do a little later stage. So it is a bit of a risk at the moment. But I do hope it does come to something, and that Bitcoins are easier to buy in the future. Like I said, there's only a limited amount of them out there. So it's not just a point that you can just earn or just build on credit. You have to actually have I want to say physical Bitcoin, but that's literally what it is. It's a physical coin living in the internet space. So there's only so many of them that can.
Let me pause you there, Devon, because Mike Jansen has tweeted us saying Hong Kong is getting a Bitcoin ATM soon. How will that work?
I imagine that might work with like NFC technology, because with your phone, you can trade Bitcoins with your friends. So if I owe you money, hope I never do. You can enter the amount, and then we
owe you for this explanation today. Believe me.
You transfer the money, and it would be much like an ATM, where you might just scan your barcode into the ATM, and then it deposits the money into that address. So, that could be really cool. But I suppose Hong Kong would be one of the best places to start.
But now, are we getting actual physical money out of it?
It's not physical money at all. It's all in the digital space. It's all held in your wallet.
So off the back of that tweet that we've just received, I've done a quick Google, and of course we've got to be careful what we. I don't want to say Google knows everything. Sure. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But
I thought they did, actually.
I did Google, yeah. And it seems like Bitcoin ATMs are coming to Australia and New Zealand as well. So shall I see based on what you've been saying now, it kind of looks like Bitcoin owners can type the number of coins they want to sell. The ATM will connect to an international Bitcoin exchange, obviously all in the ether, and processes the transaction on their behalf. And the ATM will release the cash once the Bitcoin exchange is successful. So the ATM kind of takes on a role of a foreign exchange
Absolutely
type of...
mad.
Yeah, that's quite crazy.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
I want to say thank you so much, Devon. You have cleared up so much for us.
I understand a lot more than I did. And I can kind of follow it now with a bit more clarity.
I'm a polite guy, and I'll always say thank you for the time that you've given to us and the effort that you put in. I'm not going to say that I'm fully convinced that I understand everything about Bitcoin, though. That is something that I can't say.
I think it's still very young, and a lot more is going to come out of it.
So I suggest we all track it. Yeah. Thanks very much for all the effort. You definitely have done.
No, you're a legend.
You're a legend. You really are.
You're a legend.
We hail the ground.
And also, Devon walked in here this morning going, "Oh, guys, and I think you've done a remarkable job in explaining to us. I think, Kriya, what we need to do is put into our economic indicators what a Bitcoin is worth as well as of this day forward.
That would be fantastic.
Let me find it.
That will just it's $844 on the nose at the moment as we speak. Devon, thank you for your time. Are you on Twitter? Can people fire questions at you and get in touch with you, please?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is @IAM_Devon, and that's Devon with an O. And guys,
I've been tweeting about him the whole morning, so just go to the balls.
Oh, fantastic.
So Ian, you just said at the moment we're on $844 for a Bitcoin. In November, which is not that long ago.
Yep.
It was trading at $215.
Well,
that's a pretty good
that's a good return.
return.
That's a great return.
Yeah.
But is it legal?
Of course it's legal.
It's
Yeah.
not illegal.
Yeah, it's completely
Let's
legal.
rather phrase it that way. As things stand, it's not illegal.
Trust Kriya to ask that
What?
question.
I'm Indian. I have to know these things. Okay.
Wait till she gets older and wiser and starts finding more loopholes. She's the one who rushed out to get her e-tag, if you recall.
I do, actually. Devon Stanton, thank you for your time this morning, my
Thanks,
friend.
Devon.
Thank you.
The Business on balls.co.za. Brought to you by FNB Business Banking.